I've been pruning back this old overgrown laurel here, and it's exposed a big gap, as you can see. And so I can now see these bins, so I want to screen them off. Now, originally I was thinking I'd just put up a fence, but then I thought, why cut down a tree, turn it into fencing, treat it with loads of chemicals in the hope that it will last as long as, well, a tree. So instead, I'm going to plant a hedge. Now, don't worry, I know what you're thinking. It's going to take years for this little hedge to grow tall enough to screen off these big bins and the building. But I've got a great idea to solve that problem, and I'll tell you about that later. Firstly, there are 3 important things that hedges can do that fences can't. They can capture air pollution, they help benefit wildlife, and they also prevent flooding. Tiny particles of pollution float around in the air all the time, and we breathe it in. But leaves with tiny hairs, scales, or even just a rough texture can capture those particles, and they stick to the plants, which means they're no longer in the air, which means we're no longer breathing them in. To give you some idea what I mean, even just a hedge that's 1 metre long by 1.5 metres tall can capture the pollution from approximately 60 diesel cars per year. And they might even keep the noise down a bit as well. Some of the best hedges for capturing pollution and blocking out the noise are yew, western red cedar, Cotoneaster and Elaeagnus. Hedges provide food and shelter for the kind of wildlife that help us gardeners, so we can at least provide them with some board and lodging. Blue tits and blackbirds eat caterpillars and aphids, and song thrushes eat snails. Beech, hawthorn, field maple and holly will all attract these garden good guys, but you'll also get pollen and nectar for bees, and the berries will attract birds and small mammals. Imagine you're one of these little garden creatures. Most of the time you're going to be looking over your shoulder worrying about something bigger coming along and eating you. So you don't really want to be going out in the open if you can help it. And a hedge provides them with a sort of a safe road network for them to go about their business without worrying. A plant's roots are always longer than the plant is tall. So the more roots you can have in the ground, the better, because roots suck up water, that's their job, and they can help with flooding. And if the leaves are large, even better, because the larger the surface area of a leaf, the more water it'll suck up from the soils. More and more people are paving their front gardens these days, which can cause problems with flooding because when it rains very heavily, it just runs straight off and down into the street. So ideally, if you are going to be doing that, if you've got a hedge, the water will run into the soil underneath the hedge, and the hedge can soak up that water rather than having it going into the street and causing the flooding. A fence can't do any of these things, but they appeal to our sense of impatience, don't they? I get it. So, here's my good idea. A dead hedge. All the branches I cut off from the old laurel, I've stripped off all these leaves, kept these horizontal branches, and lay it in amongst these posts here. That can be brought up whatever height you need, so it'll screen off those bins while the hedge is growing up, and 0 carbon footprint. Now is a great time to planting hedges because bare root plants are available, like this one here. They're much cheaper, and of course there's no need for plastic pots either. But before you buy them, check your soil just to make sure that the plant you're going to go for is suitable for the soil you've got. If you're not sure, have a look on our RHS website. So the first thing to do is set up a string line, so you plant them in a nice straight line. Have a look at the bare roots. If there are any broken roots or damaged roots, trim those off, and then space them out evenly. You can get a measuring stick, ideally about 50 centimetres in between each plant, lay them out, and then dig the holes, put them in, not too deep, check where the roots begin and where the plant starts. That's pretty much the depth that you want them at. And then as you fill in the soil around the bare roots, you just work it through with your fingers to make sure the soil gets in amongst all of those roots, and then you just firm it down gradually and work your way through. So once you've planted them, then you want to add some organic matter as a mulch around the soil surface. This will help keep the moisture in but it also protects the roots in their first winter rather than putting them in the hole itself. Make sure you water them in thoroughly, even if it's cold and wet. Make sure you water them in. And in their first 1 or possibly 2 years, if we do have hot, dry summers, just keep an eye on that watering, because they will need a bit of help through those hot, dry summers to start with. And then after that, they should be fine. All right, time for a cup of tea, I think. And then after that, I can get started building this dead hedge, which will screen off these bins and the building while the hedge is taking its time to grow. But have I convinced you? What do you think, hey? Are hedges better than fences? Let us know.